Hello, I'm back. I need to do the rest of this video before I'm too tired to think, to be honest. Did Muay Thai class this afternoon, and I was at the gym for an hour before the class as well, so I'm now slowly getting progressively more tired. So yeah, excuse me if I doze off to sleep halfway through. Mm, Continuing to drink protein as well. Um, okay, so I'm going to do the second half of the alt alert list. Um, Yeah, not much more to say than that, other than what I covered this morning. I think Bitcoin's come down a bit. There's not much new there, so I won't go into that now. I'll just go straight into this. So major, um, bit of a risky short that came in on this because of the fact it's made a higher low. So I did have a long off the daily demand there. I mean, if you took its sweet time reversing, so I'm not sure anybody would have managed to stay in that one. And now it's back up in this 2 week supply and daily supply. Really, this is an alert. I probably would have wanted to hit earlier. This might flip a 2 week demand, so we need to be a little bit careful of that. So this alert I probably would have had set over here and really would have wanted it to hit after this bounce. So the bounce there gave a very, very small amount before dropping back down again. It is holding the range. It has held a higher low, so I have put another alert for possible long back on that 4 day demand if it comes back down there. So that's that. Mana was a strong move. So again, this is sort of indicative of the structures I was talking about earlier as well in part one of the video. So, and again, the challenge is, so we've got 3 months supply here, huge zone. Um, there you can see. So the problem is, when you've got a zone that size, I set alerts for the open of the zone, but obviously it can go all the way to the top if it wants. Can go anywhere up to what's that? 85 cents. So that'd be 2.5 times the price. In the case of Mana, I was more confident with being slightly more aggressive, mainly because I hadn't hit demand yet. And it doesn't have to if the market's reversing before, and maybe it's trying to pick up some lower time frame support in here or something. But in the case of this, my preference would be for it to come down lower. Excuse me. So it did get a reaction off the level, but then drop back down. Let me just check if there's a 4 day in there. So it does have this new weekly. So we're getting these kind of offset weekly demands where you've got two red candles and then the green goes up through it, which, in this case, it has come up and acted as support at that point in time, which makes it again slightly more challenging. And similarly here, it's got a 5 day further down there. It's also got a 4 day now, the one I had. So 2 days tend to convert 4 days if the price remains above or below for long enough. So this does have a 4 day demand, and obviously the weekly as well. But because of the fact, and it's got a 2 day, oh, it's got another 3 day inside there actually, which I've got marked as a daily at the moment. Change that to a 3 day as well. So, something like this it's tough. It could come back down here, it could bounce, and then go up to, I've got an alert here for the 2 day above or up to the higher zones inside the 3 month. But it's not something I want to assume it's going to do. And again, there are better alts to be trading, like if you want to long than something like this. Yes, it's had a decent up move and a decent bounce, but I don't want to trade something long that's under a 3 month supply. And yeah, so this is something I'd leave alone. If you do want to long this, the 4 3 day there, that as I've said, that 5 day level doesn't look like there's much at the level. So, maybe also we could get a bounce off this daily at the base there, and have this just be a deviation having taken out that previous low. Um, However, my preference would be to look for longs on this if and when it comes back down here. Um, and yeah, as I've said previously, there was the challenge on these is these sort of trend line stops here. So, this could certainly get a bounce. It could have gone higher anyway, but it could certainly get a bounce here and go and at least take out those stops, even if it doesn't get up to the next supply. Um, But yeah, like I say, this is not something I particularly want to trade, or if anything, I would be looking for the possibility of shorts if it gives structure on the lower time frames. And again, like I say, just be conscious of this these little trend line stops here that could get taken out. Um, so yeah, up to you if you want to trade that. For me, that's a no, other than the short side. But even the short side, again, there's probably better options. Manekei gave a really nice short here, and then picked up again like that weekly level, the same as what we just saw on Mana, sort of a flipped weekly. In this case, a few weeks actually. So preference for this would be to long on the proper weekly demand, which is lower. I will see here though if it creates a new weekly demand higher, because then maybe it's worth looking at. Again, the challenge on this is we do have, I think the supply was a bit choppy, and I did have, I think, an entry here on the 3 week or something, but yeah, I don't love it from a supply perspective. So it's already come off the 2 month. It's already rejected that before the drop. And now it's coming back for, I guess, a retest of those same zones. Excuse me. So it hasn't quite hit the 3 week above there. I think I had an alert more aggressively for the weekly, and I would have said there's a 2 week and a 3 week inside it all just above it. Um, and then it's also got this monthly level. So it's just a little bit choppy. So again, like I say, there's better things I think to short. Maybe if it comes back up here, that would be worth looking at. Um, it's still got that chop down there, so it's hard to know exactly where it's going to reject. So anyway, on this, so I had the original entry on that weekly supply there, and I've had another one come in today, another alert come in for. Let me just check if that has. It does have a 4 day demand in there, and it hasn't quite tested it. Um, but I've had another alert come in today on this for this 12 hours. So the 12 hours a little bit higher, 8 hours slash 12 hour supply. So this is something you should be looking for a short from here, up into that 12 hour, and obviously taking out the high would invalidate that. Um, and then, that potentially could give a move back all the way down to there. So we'll see, but again, we need to see if the market's going to support that. I mean, it's quite a strong retracement of the drop. It's a strong drop and then a strong retracement as well. So don't know if it might need a bit more time for consolidation before, um, if and when it's going to drop. um, and yeah, other than that, like I say, yeah, the monthly level, the 2 monthly level, and monthly level, 2 monthly level really got tested, and then the monthly level a little bit higher. Um, so again, could come up a little bit higher in here if it does take out this zone as well, but it's just not clear enough on the lower time frames for me for shorts until a bit further up. Uh, MDOGS is just a horrible sort of messy chart. So I had a possible short entry here that triggered but didn't quite hit the zone. It then came down and broke the low, but I've still got the zones in there for now. Then I put in another short alert saying if we get a swing failure into taking out that high into the actual zone. So this is a monthly zone, but it's from when MEXC opened, so it doesn't necessarily mean it's a decent zone. But however, I do see them work, so I do tend to alert them. So that again gave a nice short off there. I think, I mean, yes, I was considering, do I want to put, another alert for a supply, if I get a retest of this supply, but just because it's so nasty and wicky, I don't know if it's really worth it. It's not something that's, it's a bit too volatile. I have, however, put an alert for a possible 3 day demand down below, so we'll see what happens as and when it gets there. And then failing that, there's a 2 day supply up here. It's not the best one, and again has that choppy mess through a lot of this. And you can see when it's got the choppy mess, it just throws these giant candles up through it. So this I just want to see a bit more structure, and as obviously this is a potential weekly level here. I'm not sure in which direction. That's actually, it is actually a weekly demand already. Sorry, I haven't fully updated all these charts, so that is a weekly demand. Um, so yeah, I still would like this to go a bit deeper in here. But yeah, because of the weekly demand, I probably wouldn't then. Yeah, that would also make me less inclined to look for shorts in the 12-hour supply up here. Mubarak, another one, the trend line stops to watch out for, and I think I put that comment in the alert. However, it has had a reaction off there. I've reset alert for that daily demand down the bottom. Um, which may or may not hold. So again, similar to all the structures I talked about earlier, this is still a downtrend. We have just rejected daily supply. The trend, is to take out that low. It's just a question of, whether we are going to get some sort of stronger, longer retracement or corrective move on the alts that, we're having had this drop for most of the better part of the year. In this case, since March. Well, yeah, 2 months at least for this one, but this is a new coin. So yeah, is it going to make a higher low here? Is just remains to be seen. And if it does, then it's got scope for a decent move. So worth an eye on this one when it hits the alert. Nero was one that, yeah, went a bit crazy and did go through multiple alerts. So yeah, I said there were two or three in the last stream that kind of went through a crazy amount of alerts. And again, I had commented on this in the channel. I sort of said we are having these double bottoms on things. Um, but it was again hard because a lot of the double bottoms were still under weekly supply here, and I think in this case here it still had a weekly or possibly even a 2 weekly supply in there, so hence I still had short alerts, but it just powered straight up through them, so wouldn't really have given the opportunity, particularly for anybody to take a trade or get stopped out. And then finally came up and hit this alert up here for 3 week supply or 5 day supply in there. It hasn't quite hit that level yet, but again, it's sort of messy. So let me just look at the monthly quickly. Yeah, so it's in monthly supply. Um, Again, so something like this, I will then have to look at, at the end of the month to see if this is now going to make monthly demand, because then I'd be much more inclined to be bullish on it, even though it's coming off a 1 monthly supply. It's taken out the low from when MEXC opened. I'm pretty sure this has history from Solana previous, um, prior to this. Actually, it wasn't a weekly supply in there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's got history on Solana prior to the history of MEXC. So maybe there's some support down here as well. Um, but yeah, obviously that's a strong one, so worth watching for a retest retracement. Again, so far, like the other things, I'm not being too aggressive on the retracement entries at the moment because most of them that I've seen so far are coming all the way back down to ground zero. So if I see the market starting to be more aggressive and higher supports getting picked up, like you can see here, at this point I was thinking, well, maybe this will make a higher low. I had a 2 day demand in there, but only a little bounce, and then drop lower. Another would have had a 3 day some sort of demand in here. Again, it's got a tiny bounce off it, and then it's dropped lower into the, or maybe it held whatever larger time frame zone that is there. It has made a higher low, but um, yeah, I can look at this with hindsight. I think that was, yeah, so that was a daily supply there that I had that alert on. I'm not sure what the second one was. Maybe a 2 day. Wanting to load for me. There's a 3 day. Yeah, maybe it was a daily at the top of there. These two dailies, again, possible that they would have had a reaction for a scalp, but in this case, it is coming off a higher low, so they were weak supply and it's gone up through everything. So yeah, I mean, you can keep an eye on this for a short. Certainly, it is in monthly supply. It's a bit early, and again, but if Bitcoin still shows signs of coming down like it has done so far, then obviously something like this will fall off a cliff. Does have a 12-hour here, so if you want to be aggressive, it's still quite a long way away, but um, like we saw on MANEKI, they are getting bounces off these offset zones on the way back down, so you might get a bounce sooner on something like this, but I would rather see that hit. And then the other thing I'm watching for is obviously, if this makes an 8 hour supply in here, then I'd be more inclined to look for another short entry. Like I say, that hasn't quite got to, I guess if I had 5 day, let me see what I actually put on that alert. If that was 5 day, no, it's 5 day supply, so it hasn't quite got to that alert. But if it drops now and makes an 8 hour supply, similar to Bitcoin, in fact, then you can look for shorting prior. Like sometimes the zones get undershot, sometimes they get overshot. Um, so yeah, and then there's 4 hour demand in there again. If you want to be aggressive, if you think the market's at the right point when these zones hit, then by all means take longs from sooner. I'm still, like I say, sticking with the conservative side. Um, OL, have a look at this. So this is another one that may or may not flip a weekly in here. So it had a weekly supply and it's come back through the supply. Can't get it in the right. Yeah, I'm still uploading my YouTube video, so the the internet is being caned by that at the moment. So yeah, we've come through a weekly supply. We're up in two weekly supply. Obviously, it's actually already used that level of support. So again, just need to see, is it going to make a higher low, or are these things going to just collapse off the higher time frame supplies that we're now hitting? Again, this is in a downtrend based on the 2 week, and it's aggressive move up, but until it breaks 2 week supply, this is still in a downtrend. So I have set an alert. Again, it is a strong move though, so I have set an alert for a possible retest. I actually think I had that retest in there a while ago because yeah, so I've said it's high risk, and it'll be higher risk again if it comes back because it's now moved so far away from it. I think I wanted a much more immediate test on that down there, which I didn't get. So I guess now we'll see what kind of reaction we get here. Um, yeah, so I think I put this just in case we ran through, but there were again 5 day supply, weekly supply, 5 day, 2 day, 5 day, a whole chunk of different little bits of supply. The most reliable ones are going to be the ones at the extremes, but that doesn't mean we're not going to get some interim rejections or bounces for scalps. Perp, excuse me. Um, this is another one that kind of, yeah, just hit my alert, but I think, yeah, I had it for the 5 day supply. So again, hasn't quite hit, or it came off the weekly zone rather than the 5 day inside it. Another one I've set an alert for daily demand down there, but again, it's all-time low, so it doesn't. There's no reason for it to particularly bounce here. It just has to be if the market's ready to have a bigger move up. And like so many of these, that alert didn't reset. Let me just delete that alert just in case. Um, let's delete it. It's not even letting me delete it because it's got an alert on it. Um, delete. There we go. Delete it. It's just being awkward now. Um, really doesn't want to delete. Move it out of the way for now. Um, yes, I do want to delete it. Okay, now it's gone. Yeah, so at this point, it's again, we're still guessing on whether we're going to get a higher low on this. It has a 3 day offset in there. It's got a 2 day offset. So again, just being more conservative side because we are again in a weekly downtrend. Something like this, we do have all the stops through it though, so I think it's worth keeping an eye out. Whether you're going to get an entry and maybe or maybe not, it's going to be aggressive. This appears to have held 4 hour demand, and now it's come wick through it, and now in 4 hour supply. So just keep an eye on things like this to see if they give you some consolidation or something that's worth a long. Maybe this does have a 4 hour demand in there. Um, maybe it will give a move up and take out some of these stops through here. Just a question of whether the markets are ready to do that, and I'm just uncertain of that at this point until I see some startups starting to do that. And sorry, some of the weaker ones, like I have seen some starting to do that on, for example, Deep, but Deep was coming off a 3 week demand, so it was a much stronger. Um, yeah, it's just a stronger structure in general, but on the weaker structures, like something like PERP, where it's broken all-time low, I'm less inclined to assume it's going to just go up. PIPPIN came off 5 day demand, a great again, straight up back up into 2 weekly supply. Needs a bit more time on this. Let me see if it's got a 4 day in there. Okay, so it does have a 4 day demand. Um, so I've said, as you've seen, I need to watch part one of this. I have set a bunch of alerts on these 4 day demands because I think they're worth watching. So I've set another one for this, just to see. So a 4 day demand. This is a 4 day at the low, just to see if we're going to get the higher lows in here for another potential bigger move up. And as I've said, like I'm not really convinced that the others chart or others dominance supports this. Others dominance is tentative because if Bitcoin goes up, then the alts will go up, and then US dollar dominance is going to go down. So it is, if that one's fine, or it's possible. Though I don't like the look of the chart, but Bitcoin dominance is still strong, obviously. But the others market cap chart, obviously, as I've said, it's like on the edge of death. So if it does die, then we could see alts like drop back through these new demands that are made. And that was slightly off the 2 weekly supply in there. I won't reset that because it's already had a reaction close enough. So yeah, just looking for the higher low on that, or failing that, also failing this supply working, potentially get a bigger move up. Pump obviously was outperforming last week. So the difficulty with pump, so I have put an alert here on the weekly demand, but I've said again it's a bit dodgy because it's a new coin. There's a daily and 12-hour inside down at the bottom here. So while I've set an alert here, and again it could hold this wick for this breakout. I Yeah, it's a new coin, so it's hard to know. Like some of the new coins just die instantly. Others do manage to pick up support and start, make building bigger, better structures. So we shall see on this. It does have a new daily supply above. Don't know if I really want to short that as yet. I don't like the structure of it particularly with this big down candle. So I might let a bit more of this develop first before looking for potentially for shorts. This weekly alert might be slightly too conservative. You can also look on this 4 hour. So this is, approaching somewhere that you can potentially look for long entries. Again, just being conscious that it's a new coin and new coins can go either way. They give you some really nice volatility, but then, if they're going to die, then they can really die fast. So just be a bit careful. But yeah, keep an eye on that one to see if that gets bounced at my alert or sooner. Riz. It's another bit of a messy chart. Okay, so we've got a nice short off here, but then it again didn't hold the higher low on demand here. And I had made a new 2-day supply in the interim. Show you the 2-day. So it's coming off 5-day supply. May also make a weekly and 2-weekly supply. Well, actually had sort of very slightly closed under that weekly level. And may make a 2-weekly supply in there. So again, still more bearish on this for now. It's come up, just looking through the time frame so I can see. It's in a sideways range, but it's erring on the bearish side. So I'm happy to look for possible shorts on a retest of that level. And yeah, just again, keep an eye on what demand forms, and if it does, as long as it doesn't hit that after it forms like a 3 or 4 day demand in here, and could also run higher in this zone up to there. So just be a bit careful of that as well. Yeah, the sideways range of ones are a little bit more challenging because they can, if it's just a range, then it can run from the top to the bottom of the range and not ignore these sort of mid levels. But we'll see. Rome. It feels like this list is very, very long and I'm very, very tired. So, Rome, I had an alert, a short, really nice short alert off the 4-day supply. There was one here for this zone, but obviously that didn't get much of a reaction, then came up to the 4-day. Has now made a weekly demand, but I did disclaimer this with the fact that it's got all these trend line stops underneath here. So that's a severe amount of pain. Yeah, so it's possible that it runs through all these stops. So I said that that would just be just to see if we're going to get a scalp off that. If anyway, I'm not sure if anybody traded it or not. And I'm not sure if this wick um was too quick on the lower time frames. Just having a look at what this pink line is I've had drawn up there. Doesn't seem to be anything, so probably needs deleting. I think it would be if it created a 4-day supply up there or something like that. So again, now it's a little bit like the pump chart. It's got these 2 candles up before the bigger drop. So it's a daily supply, but it's not one that I particularly love. Um, yeah, it just needs a bit more time now. Yeah, wary of those stops below. SCA, I think I commented on this briefly in part 1 of the video as well. Again, weekly supply, it's coming off weekly, short alerts hit, more aggressive short alert, and now also has 2-week demand. So I have put in an alert for possible 2-week and I think 4 or 5 day demands that are in there because I think that's worth looking for a retest potential long entry. And then another one that was really difficult and choppy throughout this. So it's got a 2-month supply here. It's got a 3-month quite a lot higher. That's an old 3-month actually. And then 2-week, 3-week supply, which are clean on the higher time frames, but have this wick through them on the lower time frames. So it's a bit more of a challenging one on SCA. But again, I want the retest down here, but not longing where we are now. Siege, oh wow. Okay, that's just Mexi history. So yeah, this was a aggressive short entry on I think daily supply in there. Looks like the wick didn't quite hit it actually, but yeah, that's something that I would just look for continuation down. I will have a look back at this to see. Oh, it has now made a 3-day supply in there. Check the 4-day. 4 days already been tested. 3-day, 2-day, daily. So I would prefer to look for shorts in this 3-day supply if we'd actually broken below the wick. However, because I like trading in both directions, and also don't love those trend line stops either. Um, but I do like to have aggressive entries in both directions, just so you're on whatever the right side of the market happens to be. So you've got options on no matter what time of day is or what Bitcoin's doing, etc. So you always have options for entry. So I'm going to throw in another alert there. I don't love it actually on the lower time frame, but I have seen some of these work out quite well, so I think it's worth an alert. Let me just check what. Okay, so it's only on MEXC, it's not on any other exchange. I thought this was on some more exchanges actually. But yeah, that makes me more confident as well because if it's MEXC only, then there's a fair chance, there's a much higher chance that it will just drop. And less visibility. Sling down 17%. Okay, so another one, yeah, that I was short biased. Shorts up there. I think this alert went, but again, it didn't quite hit the level. And then has now made a new 4-day in there, 4-day supply. Let me have a look at what the weekly and 2 weekly is doing. So we might end up with a monthly supply in there in the next week. There's a 5-day in there now. Hmm. So it's a bit messy with that wick. So there is a 12-hour supply and then a 5-day in there. So again, there's a more aggressive entry if you want it. This 12-hour could reject, maybe that's the test already done of the 12-hour above, the kind of wick just about filled that gap. Again, because I prefer the higher time frames, I'm going to stick with leaving my alert up a little bit higher for now. But again, you can watch this if it gets a retest at 6487 or in that zone for possibly a more aggressive short. See what the 8-hour looks like. Yeah, so I mean the 8 hours doesn't have anything, any supply, but the 4-hour also has supply at the level. So it's possible this is too conservative up here. It might just reject a test of this level, this 4-hour below. But anyway, because it's likely to be a low volume coin, and we see again which exchanges. Okay, so also it's just another MEXC coin. So we'll see what happens on that. But yeah, nice shorts working out there. Sui is one that I did proper analysis on last week in my but on request and in a larger video, and I did post an update on this yesterday anyway. Let me see. So we haven't actually gone through these daily zones yet, although we are up in this weekly supply. So again, I didn't put a short entry on this purely because it's coming off 3 months demand. So this is why I was bullish on this based on the fact it was coming off 3 months demand at the lows. We'd already had the alert going for the test of this zone in here. It took a bit of a wick into it. I actually thought it might go for these stops here, but hasn't. Then it's gone through a 3-week supply here. So it had a 3-week supply, which would have been aggressive if it were to short it there. Might make a 2-week demand and might make a weekly demand. So again, next few days are critical, but once the next few days have played out, then I think it's potentially worth looking for long entries back down here. Let me just see if it's got that 4-day that everything else has. It does. So I will throw in. So yeah, the only thing I still don't like those stops below. So yeah, worth looking for longs on this, on a retest of this zone potentially. Maybe more aggressive longs if those weeklies confirm before it's been tested. 4-day demand. But yeah, so worth looking for longs in here if it comes back for a test. Just be conscious of these equal lows down here, and that was my other in the bigger picture. My other concern was, are we going to come back down and test this yearly level that's below here? And this is still only a semi-retracement, so it's still very possible that this can reject soon around here, or higher again. It's got a bit of the chop through the zone, but around where it is now. So I mean, if you are in this, I would suggest taking some profit off it, or at least trailing stops or something, because it could come back down, get a bounce, and then run back through into there. With this bigger structure being an ABC. But what I guess we would hope for is that even if that is a bigger ABC, that we're going to get an ABC first. So I guess we'll see. Um, Damn, I feel like I actually need to go and take a painkiller for my back. You see me squirming around. Um, Lots of punching, so it tightens up those knots in your shoulders. But thankfully, I'm in Thailand, so therefore I can go and have a massage at any time. Although I think I might fall asleep if I have one today. There's also, so inside that 4-day, there is a 2-day demand inside there. So if you want to get a slightly more precise entry, you can look at the lower time frames inside. And then, yeah, I don't think I've got anything on the short side. That was the sort of cleanest up at that 2-day because, again, it's just got chop and mess through here. Um, and something like this with this strength, again, look at the lower time frames if you want to try and get an entry. If there's a 12-hour and 8-hour. In fact, there's a 12-hour here. So I might just put that alert a little bit higher, just in case it wants to front run me. Just check the 8-hour as well. Then I do that, and then I find there's another 8-hour even higher. So I'll do that 8-hour, then 4-day demand, just in case it sort of wants to front run if it's doing an early bounce if people are into this. But yeah, if there's any lower time frames that you want to try and get in, it's a big green move up. And again, it's now in weekly supply, so there's also no reason you can't be looking for shorts, around this area. It's not, for me, it's not a high probability area. Again, there's higher probability shorts given this is coming off a 3 month demand. So therefore I'm leaving it alone. But if you see the lower time frame after a move like that and it gives you a short entry, then by all means take it. Thai. This is another one with a big move down. I think the whole market's a big move down. But so yeah, I do have an alert up here for 2 month supply. Another one of the ones is difficult because it's got 2 month, it's got 3 month inside it, and then it's got a whole load of choppy low time frame stuff. But stick with the entry. So if it does get up there, that would be for potential shorts. As we are now, we're also in a 5-day supply now and a 3-day supply inside it. I also said there was a weekly. I think when I set the alert, I said there was a weekly a little bit higher, so this could go a little bit higher in the zone. I think I did reset that alert, but for some reason it's not showing up. Yeah, just the weekly supply. There is an alert here if it goes a little bit higher in the zone. And then I set a more aggressive alert on this. Actually, I think I was looking at it earlier. It's got a daily demand because it's not that high time frame supply. I thought, okay, well maybe if this is a stop hunt of those lows, a deviation, maybe this can hold a bit higher. It does have a 2-day and it does have this big gap down here, so I don't know. Again, is it going to retrace the whole thing? I'm not sure at this stage. But worth having some more aggressive alerts as well. So I've gone more aggressive on that one. Tau is something everybody likes, but Tau again hasn't got to where I would have wanted it to get to at the lows. So I mean, yes, it's made a very slight higher low there, so that's fine, I guess. I really wanted it to go into this 3-day demand, or even down into this 6 month below, but it's a giant range up here. So now just hit weekly supply. Does have a monthly supply further up. So again, we're just seeing what the reaction is on this. I can see, so it's got, again, a challenging one because it's got a bunch of levels that are untested. So always the difficulty I have with these is, we've got a 4-day, no, it's not a 4-day, maybe a 5-day and a 3-day demand. So yeah, there's a 5-day and a 3-day demand here. And it's got an untested daily below. This is actually a monthly demand to the left. I think I've just deleted it. So it actually has just made a very slight higher low in a monthly demand. So I should probably let me just show that. Yeah, it's not the best monthly demand, but that essentially that whole thing is a monthly demand. Maybe I should put that back in just so I remember where I'm at. Um, yeah, so there's monthly supply up there, and then there's equal highs at 45. So if this does push, that would be the areas I would look for shorts, so that where the cross is, and then I've got a black cross where there are the equal highs. And now we're in 2 week supply, so again, short biased. But this is short biased being in a larger range. So again, it's one of the shorts I'd be less confident about. But is obviously giving us a small reaction so far. But obviously can easily pick up this demand and push back higher if it wants to. So um, again, I think there's probably better shorts to take than this, given that monthly demand. But yeah, looking at the long side either here or in this in the daily at the low, if we do retrace more of these moves, I think are worth looking for. Has broken some local structure, but still has the 2 week supply to contend with. TIBBIR has been a nice one, like sort of just trading it up and down, or trading it mostly up actually. So got longs off the lows here, a long re-entry on the daily demand there. Didn't quite get up from my short entry, and has now made a daily supply in here. So that's that. So, and I think I said, yeah, just this. I can't remember what I said. But no, maybe I'm getting distracted. No, this is just a straight 2 day demand in there. I haven't got marked as a 2 day, but anyway, straight 2 day demand. It's coming off. So at the lows, it's coming off a monthly demand. Then it has a 2 week sitting on top of that. So it came down deep into the monthly and the 2 week. Might make a new 2 week demand this week. So again, like if that happens, then I'll be significantly more bullish. It's actually used that as support at the low. So this is not something I massively want to look for shorts on. I think this is still worth watching because the last supply before a drop or the last demand before a pump is always worth watching. So I'll leave that alert alone, but I won't look for a more aggressive alert here, given it's found support on this 2 week level at the base there. Turbo was one of the others that like deep and the other one? Can't remember now. Oh, NEIROETH that just ran through a lot of supply. So again, same as the examples I've given, we've got all this trend line stops here, even though I think this was a weekly supply or something. I think, I put there's a weekly supply there or a 5 day supply, maybe it was. And I said, but just be conscious we're going to potentially can take out these trend line stops. So only take it if it really gives you a proper entry. And it really ran straight through up to the next zone. And again, as I said in the video this morning, this is why I was looking at these 2 days. So while this is a weekly, we still have a 2 month there, flipping a 2 month level. So for it to take out those stops into this 2 day, in this case, 2 day, 3 day supply and come back down would be quite reasonable. And that's why I've set some of these alerts, like I think some of these cases, maybe some of these are going to get all the way to the top, particularly ones that are coming off monthly demand at the lows. Um, but in this case, obviously it's showing, giving a reaction off there. And then this is similar to one of the other ones I charted a minute ago, and they're now all melding into one that's got a 3 day demand and it's got a daily below. So again, is it going to hold a retest more aggressively? Or is it going to want to retrace that entire move? Or is it still in a downtrend? Like something like this, obviously, yes, you're more confident of taking a long entry. It's had a really strong move up. But I still need to see some of these hold. You are seeing things like Ergo, which obviously that was crazy. And there are some that are just retracing in full. I need to have a look, for example, at where Orca's at. Although that was holding last I saw it, so maybe that has moved higher now. That's Turbo T. I haven't charted this for a few days since it hit. Okay, so this came into 2 monthly supply and then 3 monthly supply, and the 5 day inside it. I think I just reset the alert for the 3 week, 2 week above if it was going to push from there, but it did actually give a strong reaction off that level. It's got a new 3 day demand down here. Maybe it has the 4 day now. No, it doesn't have a 4 day on that. But it does have a 3 day, so certainly worth looking for longs if it comes a bit lower. Maybe it's going to flip the weekly, like again we've seen on some of them. It's closed above this weekly level here, so it might just hold this weekly level and it's a yearly open. So this again is one of the more challenging ones. Is it a deviation of the low? I know I saw one this morning that looked similar to this, but I can't for the life of me remember what. Could be a deviation of the low and go back up again, or it could be just a bearish retest and now it's going to die forever. I think it was fourth was the one I was looking at that was similar to this. So again, got like three or four different types of structures on these that are like consistent to a vast majority of the charts. They've got that, a handful of them are doing their own thing entirely, and more so the newer coins. And then with the ones with history, there's a handful of structures. Some of the stronger ones are holding these monthly demands that they made from last year. The weaker ones have broken below. Some of those have just kept going, and others are doing this sort of either deviation or swing fail of the low. Um, so anyway, yeah, worth watching this for, if this is a deviation of the low, then maybe it'll get a test on there and come back up. Similarly, it's got that daily below to watch if the 3-day fails. Got a made a daily supply in here now. And then also it has a 12-hour or 8-hour at the top there. Made a 12-hour demand. And has, yeah, a couple of 8-hour supplies there. So again, because this is coming off a 2-month supply here, and the 3-month, I think this is worth bring that alert down. See what that alert is. So that was just 2-3 week supply inside 8-hour supply. So yeah, given this is coming off the much higher time frame, I think it's worth looking for bearish retest. It's similar to MANEKI, that if you get the bearish retest, um, and then potentially get the bigger drop off it. So again, this there is a risk involved with looking at this 3-day demand for a long, in the fact that it's coming off 3-month supply. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if it goes straight through this. But again, we just need to see, because it does have an option, if it wants to go higher in this zone, if the market is stronger, if this is a deviation of the low. Always pros and cons. I'm doing this as very, very quick analysis, so I'm obviously not thinking things through extensively, but I'm just giving you examples of what I've seen as normal. Tut was again a more aggressive 8-hour supply alert. I'm just taking out those highs. It appears to have a 3-day in there now. Now the 3-day is not confirmed, so it's in. It's got a messy 2-day demand in there. Look, it didn't confirm a 2-day here. That's just so it's in kind of messy daily 2-day demand. But yeah, a nice little scalp short off that. So again, just need to see if it's going to get through this zone, and maybe it'll get a bounce on this daily down here. Um, Possibly worth watching. Let me have a look at the weekly if we have. I think I didn't like this from the perspective. So this is a weekly demand. So arguably this whole thing is in a weekly demand. But I believe this was the one that was then also similarly is in 2 weekly supply. So that same level is 2 weekly supply and weekly demand. So again, it makes me a little bit indecisive. I think I noticed that after this alert hit, but then I kind of thought, well, I don't really want to have a long here if this is going to also, if this reaction is also like going to be the 2-week supply playing out. Um, and if it's going to come all the way back down now with that 2-week supply playing out. You see my screen flickering a bit. I hope it's all okay. But yeah, you can look for longs there if you want to, but for me, this would be a waiting till lower situation. Viv, I don't know really what happened with this. I don't know if it's being delisted or something like that. I had an alert for 2-day demand in there. It got a little bounce off it, but then made or went up into 12-hour supply, I think was in there, and then it just dumped straight off there. So that's not something that I want to look for longs on. I might look back at this in a few days and see what the close is like. If I've obviously got a potential weekly level in there, potentially 5-day level. Like if it makes some new supply in here, then I might look for short entries more aggressively. Not again need to move that. Um, so yeah, just see what happens on that. But obviously that was an aggressive long that hasn't worked at all. I thought maybe there was hope for that because it hadn't actually hit supply. And again, that's what kind of one of the challenges, if it hasn't hit supply, then you sort of think, okay, well, demand might hold at least while it goes up to the next supply. But the problem is if it hasn't hit supply and it's rejected before that, that can also mean it's just significantly weaker. Protein. Um, so in this case, it's just become did get a bounce off there, but it was just straight back into supply and then knocked back down again. But that also, the structure of that looks like it might be a delisting. Vine, load my drawings, please. This is kind of a nice consolidation here, but again, difficulty is because it's under this monthly level. It's a MEXC monthly on the open of the chart, so it may not be a very good zone. Let me just see if it's actually, yeah, it is actually on all the other exchanges, so that may not exist. Yeah, I think I put in the comment, not sure if monthly exists on other exchanges, but I haven't gone to check it, and I'll only check it, as and when that potentially hits. Um, it's made a weekly demand, it's under a weekly supply still, so it's still pretty indecisive here. But it is making a kind of a nice consolidation to get a long entry in there, a little short to being aggressive here, but didn't break the low. Came back higher and then another long entry on the retest here, but it's just making a triangle. So I think I was kind of mulling over this triangle, thinking, I guess it might get a triangle breakout here, and it is a decent consolidation. But similarly, I've seen very similar structures. I've seen them go both ways. They can throw giant green candles, but they can also just fall off a cliff. Um, so I'm a little bit on two minds about that. But it's something you can keep an eye on for if you want to set alerts for yourself on the trend lines. In case it gets a trend line breakout, then no reason why not. VOXEL. Okay, so I had an entry, I think, with a weekly supply in there. Another example, it's taken out a lot of the stops and went up to the 2 monthly level. Got a 3 monthly level in there as well, but maybe that's not confirmed. And it's offset 3 monthly level, so it's gone in. Actually, it does have a 3 monthly supply in there, so I think, yeah, the alert was for 2 months / 3 month supply. So it's obviously gone higher into that zone before rejecting. And could still go higher again if it wants to. It's got this offset weekly demand, as I've shown in a few others. In this case, I've drawn it, but I don't really like drawing those because it's not really a good zone. And then, yeah, I was potentially looking for if we're going to get a retest for the lower high. So just something on this. So again, be careful on this, because it's probably going to create a new daily demand in there, which has still got 12 hours to go. I'm forgetting I'm in a different time zone. So the yeah, so where I think, oh, it's 8 p.m., it's only a few hours till the daily close. It's actually a lot longer. Um, anyway, it potentially is going to make a daily demand in there. It's already got a 12-hour demand in here now. So this could get some edging up. It's got an 8-hour supply there. I think I put in the alert. Yeah, so I put an 8-hour supply or watch for the run through into the 2-hour above. So again, I've talked about this type of structure before, and I've seen this um, happen a few times where price comes back up to here, depending on what demand it's got. And in this case, it looks like it'll have a daily demand. So if it gets up to there, then you can see a rejection, and then it can go up to where if it's got an untested hourly or 2 hourly above, and that's where you see the bigger rejection. And I think we saw that on Orca. So if you want an example, that's one to go and look at. And yeah, so a clean hourly, 2 hourly supply. In fact, even the bigger zone here. Um, that it could run through this and go up to the higher zone before it rejects. And for the second wave down, or the bigger move down. So yeah, I've set the alert there, but obviously the comment says potentially it might go higher. Well, okay, this is another one that I was looking at this earlier, thinking, okay, this actually might, maybe it's going to break out. So I did have an alert set for the daily supply. I would have wanted it to reject quicker, just take out that high and drop straight back down, but it's holding here. So if it's holding here, then maybe this is going to get a breakout. But again, there's nothing for me, there's no clean demand for me to trade on this. But again, if you want to watch this on the lower time frames, then by all means do. It's got a 4-day in there now, and then it may have a weekly just below it. So if it confirms that by the end of the week, then I'd be more inclined to be a little bit more aggressive. For now, I've just got an alert on daily demand there, so I'd like to at least see come back down here before a move up. But if you're an aggressive trader or a scalper, then you can see that maybe this is going to break out sooner. It's made a new 8-hour demand here. So, maybe it's just going to hold that as a support and go straight from here. But for me, as I always say, I'm not a great breakout trader, and I'm certainly not I would never trade a long in resistance. However, I've seen many people do it and be successful, but every time I try and do it, try and go, oh, look, it looks okay here. It's made an 8-hour demand. I'll try and long. It will reject 3 minutes later. So for me, I'm either not good at judging them or just very, very unlucky with the ones I pick that I do decide to do it on. So for me, I'd much rather either I miss this or I wait for it to come back for demand, or it goes up and then I get a retest later. So again, I don't phase myself on, oh, I missed this, even if it goes up 100%, because I know it'll come back and give me a re-entry at some stage later, or there'll be something else to trade. Um, Wing, I'm pretty sure I read this was a delisting, so obviously now that has gone through demand. So this was something that hit a few days ago. Obviously we had the which hasn't quite made a lower low there yet, so we'll see. Um, Short off 5-day supply here, and it's dropped back through. And then I think I had an alert for daily demand in there. So again, another good example of where we see these large moves up. So far, I mean, so far most of them haven't tested, but so far the ones we have seen that have tested, like Vib, like Wing, are not holding, or just holding that initial bounce and then dying not too long after. So now I've got a daily supply in here. Let me just see what the other time frames are showing me. So there's a 2 week all the way up there. Could well make a weekly supply. So yeah, if this makes a weekly supply, then I'll be more inclined to be more aggressive on the short, and I will start looking for a short potentially down here, but that needs to confirm first. Another day, and it might create another day and a half, and it might create a new 5-day supply in there. So again, obviously this is not something I really want to look to long. I would be more inclined to wait. So I'll wait, and if this confirms, potentially look for a short in there at a later date. Yeah, so it just took a wick off that demand, but then straight back up into supply. It looks very, very similar to VIB actually. So again, not sure if these are being delisted because that's a sort of similar delisting type news reaction that it's dropped, it's pumped because the news hasn't caught up, and then finally it just dies, and there is a possibility that will just fall off a cliff now. WIZZ is an interesting one. And again, yeah, it's something that's probably worth keeping an eye on here because move that alert up. Um, Next spot all-time high. It's obviously got the rejection here off this double top there from previously, but it's come back and has held daily demand in here. It's a bit messy. Don't love the messiness, but it is holding. Hasn't flipped that daily to supply. So um, I don't think there's anything wrong with looking for longs if you're on aggressive longs on this. So yeah, let's see this famous last word. So we'll come back to WIZZ later and see if me saying yeah, why not look for a long? At least if you're looking for a long here, you've got a defined stop. You can either put it under that wick or you put it under the whole zone if you want to. Um, but it is a defined stop, and then potentially has the potential for a larger move. So WIZZ is certainly one to keep an eye on if it holds this area. I'll put that in the Telegram a bit later. XCN is interesting actually. Is one I think I gave as an example in the group of something that could go and take out all these stops. But unfortunately, I think I didn't have a trend line alert set. Oh, actually, maybe I did, but the problem is the trend lines on these, the trend line alerts only work on the linear scale. So even if you've got a trend line on the log scale, which you want to see broken, you can't set an alert for that. So I think I didn't, but I think I did put it in the channel as something to keep an eye on. Maybe I was too early, maybe it was here to see if it takes out these stops, but obviously, so that's had a really nice run. Um, I do know that I put that alert in there, and I think it was a 2-day or a 3-day supply in there. It was a 3-day, and it was relatively clean, but I think I did say, this could run through all the stops. It has run all the way back up to the top. Um, has hit my alert for hourly supply for a retest, but really has had a bit too long consolidating. in the interim. Um, and as I've got the 3-day demand drawn in there, but it may not confirm. It's actually a 2-day now. So it's a 2-day and it's come off that. So um, I don't know. I think I'll just leave that alert there and see whether you get a reaction there. But obviously, this is something that's looking reasonably interesting from a bull perspective. Look at the those random green lines are back in the day. Um, yeah, so this is a little bit of a tough one, really. It's retraced down to an hourly demand, and yes, it could just go up from here, but really, in a perfect world, you want it back down at the bottom of the screen there, testing this monthly demand rather than looking for aggressive longs in here. But that's up to you. Like if you want to play this, really the preference would have been to get into it somewhere back down here, not now. So yeah, be a little bit careful. But yeah, I mean, I'd be looking for the lower high on this. But yeah, just be conscious. It's got that potential. It's going to make that 3-day demand today by the looks of it. It's 2-day already anyway. Um, so this could just run up from here. Um, look at the supply above. So there's a monthly supply all the way up here and a 2-month. No, 3-week. 2-week. So it's rejected a weekly. It's got another weekly. Yeah. So I probably wouldn't look for shorts until all the way up here. So this, obviously it might just take out the high. Actually, it doesn't quite tap that weekly. So it's possible it just takes out the high into that weekly. But this is not a very nice, clean area to look for shorts. From historically anyway. Maybe it wants to come all the way back up to the top there. Put that in as all-time high, just so I haven't looked at it later if I come back to this at any point. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting chart compared to the others. It's doing something different. Yeah, I want to see a little bit more from this, I guess. If this consolidates here for a few more days, give a few more daily candles, and looks a bit more like WIZZ. So WIZZ not on the daily, but WIZZ is looking more, it's tighter. Whereas XCN is still a little bit more volatile and up down. So if it can consolidate more tightly such that you can have a defined stop and you can have a defined demand to enter on, then I'd be inclined to look for longs on this. But we shall see. I did put an alert here for the daily if it does retrace, although obviously my preference, like I say, is down here. So this would be a lower high and then potentially lower low. But again, maybe it will just range up here. And then finally Zig. So Zig, I've been waiting however long for it to break down. It's quite funny. I actually spotted a certain influencer on this the other day who, the entire time I've been shorting this year, has been looking for longs on every bounce. And there are so many posts where Zig's about to break out and then it just dies. So anyway, from my from my perspective, I was like, well, dropped, came back up. It's testing this 2 monthly supply here. I haven't got it drawn in, but it's like come quite high inside it. 3 month supply, in fact. Should probably put that level in. Don't know why I haven't got it in. But yeah, it's in this 3 month supply here. So for me, this is looking for shorts. It's just taking its sweet time. So it made a 3 month supply, but it hasn't come and tested that yet. It made a 2 month and then rejected it. So I was looking for shorts the entire time in that 2 month. So this 3 month is new. Let's look at that 3 month again. Okay. So that's another possible short entry, again, if the market does have a bounce again. But for me, this is much more short bias, or it was at least short bias at a minimum down to this level, if not down to weekly demand there, monthly below, or and or lower high, this could just drop. So I certainly wouldn't be long biased on this at resistance, at a major resistance like a 3 month supply. Um, But yeah, so I have had multiple entries on this, like this section. So it's now got a 2 week supply in there and a 3 month. So decent level up here to look for shorts, decent area if it does come back there. Um, but yeah, for a long time I was looking at, so I'm just scrolling through the different time frames, and the difficulty now again is it's got that 4 day demand. So I don't know if this is now going to want to run again, just to spite me. and maybe that influencer will finally be right. Let's put that 3 month. Wanted to put that 3 month level in, but I can do that after the stream since this is the last one anyway. So yeah, I had a couple of trend line breaks here, and then I was looking for short in the retest. So I think the first break gave a very aggressive retest. Yeah, that's the alerts running out again. Gave the first break gave the very aggressive retest up here. I'm trying to just pick the clean ones. Then it made a 3 day supply, so I put a more aggressive short entry. It's come up a little bit higher in that, and it's taken its time dropping, but has dropped eventually off that area. And then has made a 4 day supply, and now also has a weekly supply in there. So um, yeah, so I had an alert there, I think, for daily, yeah, that would be daily supply, again, more aggressively. And it's come a little bit higher in the zone and hit. I think the weekly was made after I set that alert. So again, just need to see if this 4 day is going to hold or if it's going to run through this. But yeah, I have been very short biased on this, obviously, for the most part. The only thing with this 3 month level here is again these just wicks on the lower time frame that I don't love. But I'll set the alert there anyway. Um, because it is a 3 month. And again, so as I said before, I like to have a mixture of aggressive and less aggressive, and then also higher time frame and lower time frame because so the 3 month it just depends where the market's at when it hits. If it's a random pump into that 3 month level, then it'll probably get a reaction straight off the level. If the whole market's bullish, then maybe it'll go up and take out a lot more of these stops, and or maybe it'll go all the way up to the top of the supply. Um, but yeah, so we need to see. So yes, this could have found like a support at the low. That would be a zone that I would have looked for longs if I was looking for longs on this, but obviously I'm more focused on looking for shorts because I feel like it's going to break down lower. Um, and yeah, but I won't be shorting again until we have a significant move up or a significant drop and then a retest. But yeah, I don't want to short more aggressively than this coming off that daily demand that is at the top of an impulse. So when you have a last move up like this, the last sort of major demand it makes that's tested can be the one that holds for the whole range. Not always, but it can be reasonably reliable. And when everybody thinks things are breaking down, that's actually the demand that holds. So I would have liked to have seen it go through that for them to cement my short bias, but I guess we'll see. Anyway, that's an hour finishing off those alt alerts. Yeah, as I've said before, please let me know if you have any requests. I do these because these are my alerts that come through, and it means I can update and look at the charts, and I just talk about the structures and things like that. But I know obviously that people don't trade all of these, and a lot of them can be more obscure because they're the MEXC alt. So unless you're trading on MEXC, then maybe they're a bit too obscure for you. So like I'm happy to take requests if anybody wants to give me requests for more the more common coins, or maybe I should look at the Binance coins. I don't know. Maybe that would be more interesting for people. But yeah, feel free to give me any feedback on that. And yeah, I'm going to sign out now and go and get some food before I starve to death or fall asleep. And I will see you on the next stream. Please like, follow, and subscribe if you're into this content. Thank you. Good night.